I kind of begrudgingly respect just the dedication to not getting better at what you do for a living. Just coast through life.
It probably shouldn't even happen.
If you got it, you got to flaunt it, Acid.
You know what? I got a lot of stuff that I don't want to flaunt, so I just keep it to myself.
Jeremy is really big into the used mattresses. That's an excellent deal.
He has a used mattress store on the side. And we found out that Anthony's friends are all 13-year-old boys.
Whoever wins gets Acid's ball soap. Clay, how you doing?
Doing a little more poorly after that terrible introduction. I was just fine, to be honest with you.
Hello, Sci-Fi Gangsters. This is the show where we talk about science fiction, comic books, and video games, but really, it's just an excuse for me to catch up with my friends, old and new. I'm Anthony Dennar, a media scholar and person who is extremely excited about our guest today, Dr. Paul Booth. I'm so excited to have you on, professor of digital communication at DePaul University, author of two of one of my favorite books on my comprehensive exam, including Digital Fandom and Playing Fans. What's this? Oh, do I have the book right here? Oh, Playing Fans.
What? Oh my God!
There it is.
You're too kind.
But in all seriousness, me and you are kind of like, I'm definitely looking at fans in terms of the relationship with media, in terms of playing with media, and the negotiation with industry and that sort of thing. So, anyways,
that's wonderful to hear.
But yeah, so I enjoyed both those books. Brand new book coming out, Board Games as Media, or it's out. But yeah, that's your new book.
It came out at the amazingly timed release of right in the middle of a pandemic. So, everyone was rushing to their bookstore to get a copy. It came out in January of 2021, and I'm super excited to talk to you about it and about board games.
Excellent. And of course, that's our topic today. We're talking about our favorite board games. We'll each share our three favorites. And who better to talk about or to have as a guest is someone who's literally written books on board games, right? So excellent. Very excited to have you on. Really appreciate it. So like I said before, that's our topic for today. What are our favorite board games? Our other great panelists include Lindsay. Lindsay, how you doing?
I'm good. Long time no see, right?
Yeah, we had you on the show last week. Paul, Lindsay has become our stereotypical fill-in person when one of our co-hosts can't be here.
That's right.
That or whenever they just need a girl to talk for a little bit, right?
Or that, yeah. I think we're going to replace Jeremy completely with Lindsay, which, let's just go ahead and make that official.
All right, excellent. And then, of course, my favorite Twitch streamer, Acidtrain, and bus driver, Auburn bus driver. Acid, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. It's been an interesting couple of days. So yeah, I'm glad to be here to talk about it.
That doesn't sound worrying at all.
I feel like there's
it's actually a pleasurable couple of days, just interesting.
All right, excellent. All right, well the fall semester is coming up, and soon we're all going to have to be going back to our busy schedules.
Indeed.
Yes.
Before we begin, you can listen to us on YouTube. We're also on Spotify as well. If you rather listen to us in podcast form, you don't want to see these faces. I totally understand, especially this one. If you
a lot of beard going on this.
There's a lot of beard going on.
You're kind of exempt from that, but the rest of us are really just sporting the facial foliage.
I don't know. I'm sure Zoom at this point has a filter for that if I really wanted it.
Oh, I think you should.
That's true, definitely. And of course, I always do with my old tired joke. My beard is the I can't fill it in beard. It's like it doesn't fill in all the way beard. All right, so but yeah, got a great panelists here today. That is our topic. But first, we catch up. That's what we do on this show. And I'll go ahead and begin. And because I have Dr. Booth here, I have to talk about I know there's a running joke on the show, Paul. They make fun of me because I always diverge into academic conversations. They give me a hard time about it, but I'm definitely going to do it today.
Yeah, this is your time to do it.
That is, right? That's my time to shine. I'm currently working on my dissertation, right? Done with comprehensive exams, working on my dissertation. One thing that I'm examining as sort of like the through line is sort of the what I'm calling the white masculine crusader subject position that's perpetuated by media and by particular fan communities. So I'm kind of looking at reactionary fans like Mel Stanfield talks about. So one thing I've been doing is I've been reading a lot of FBI documents for the Capitol rioters.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And man, is this fascinating. This is the most entertaining. First of all, if you've never read an FBI document before, and this is the first time I did, they are the most detailed documents that I have ever seen. It's almost doing my research for me. So there's this one particular gentleman, I'm not going to mention his name, but if I'm going to describe him, so you'll be able to figure it out because he's been the butt of jokes on Colbert and stuff like that. But a particular gentleman who was literally cosplaying during the Capitol riot. He was cosplaying as a character, a historical figure in the Book of Mormon called Captain Moroni, and it was cosplay. He was dressing up as a costume, and of course he kind of gets kind of carried with everything that's going on, and he finds himself into the Capitol building, right? And obviously it'd be easy to kind of make jokes about him, but his story is so fascinating to me because he traveled all the way from Arizona to the Capitol building. He was documenting his events through the Capitol building. He was recording himself, and that's how the FBI was able to put charges against him. But he was documenting himself on his camera, but he was talking to his mom, right? So that's what Colbert was making jokes about. That he's like, hell, like during the whole thing, he was like, "Hey, mom, now I'm in the Capitol. Now I'm in Pelosi's office." So he's a 48-year-old man who lives with his mom, and he was, kind of got caught up with everything. But just it's so fascinating how thin the boundary between sort of like benign play and toxic, dangerous play. Like it goes from boom to boom. And that's kind of what I've been sort of examining. That's what I'm writing about in my dissertation, is how a lot of times when we think of play, we think of it as, benign or, sometimes progressive. And really that's not the case. Like it can be just as toxic, just as damaging as anything else, right? Gamergate and that sort of thing is obviously, these are examples of this as well. But Paul, I'm interested to hear what you think about this.
That's absolutely fascinating. I mean, I think you're right. We think of play as benign or as meaningless in a lot of ways. It's something that we do when we're not doing the important things in our life. This is one of the things that I found so challenging when I write about board games, where I write about fans, is I take seriously the things that other people think are frivolous. And I think you bring up a really good point, that this line between what is play for fun and then what is dangerous play gets very, very thin. And you could even look at it in terms of like childhood play. Like there's that moment when playing becomes scary or becomes dangerous because you're playing, I don't know, climbing a tree and you get too high, or you're riding your bike and you go too fast. There's that moment where it suddenly transitions into something else, something that is serious. And I wonder if that danger is part of the thrill of play in a certain sense. We're always skirting close to danger, skirting close to being scared, being on a roller coaster, right? And it's only when we're back safe that we can look back and say, like, that was fun.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a great point. And the one thing that I'm finding challenging when I'm writing is how do we. So, for example, this particular gentleman, you could make the argument that he was relatively harmless. He kind of got caught up with everything else. Yes, I mean, these are legitimate, legal consequences involved. But then when you compare him to, for example, militia groups who have much more insidious motivations, Many of them had brought weapons to the Capitol, right? They didn't bring them to the actual Capitol, but they had stockpiled weapons in their hotels. But the way I'm looking at this is even something like militia, where you are part of a community where you're actually playing out a fantasy. Now, at what point does it? The difference is, when we usually compare we're fans, we say, "Hey, fans, we know that this is pretend. We know this, and we're just playing." But at what point does a militia member who may legitimately believe the fantasy that they're playing out, at what point is this like, or does it even matter, right? Does the incredulousness of the player matter?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I wonder whether they even think they're playing at all. Like maybe they're taking this deadly seriously, and it's not play to them. It is real life. And I think maybe part of the reason it's so hard to get into the mind of the insurrectionists or the QAnon folks is that what I might think is not very serious or kind of silly is definitely not for those people. They're deadly serious about it.
Yeah, that's definitely the evidence of that is bringing weapons to the Capitol, right? I mean, their goal, sometimes you wonder, like, to what extent they believe the fantasy, and
and if I could kind of insert in here as well, because Anthony does a lot with fan studies. I would have been doing a lot with video games and digital games, and there's even, I feel like, an interesting kind of insert into all of this with how we're understanding play with things like virtual reality, with things like ARG and AR storytelling, like on Twitter and such, that seems to be making us blur this line between play and reality more and more and more through time, and bringing up the question of play and pretend on a more regular basis with less clear answers every single time. And so I wonder if there's not going to be kind of a psychological twist coming up because of how common it is to have these blurred lines. And I know it's a little bit out of left field, but I also know that you've written a little bit about ARGs and such in the past as well, Dr. Booth.
Yeah,
so.
I also find that blurring of reality and fiction and play and seriousness. I like those shades of gray between things that might normally be very separate. We might think of as very separate. And I think that's a great point. I see ARGs as like this perfect metaphor for how the world is today. We're all living in our own personal ARGs, and like, how we play them and how we succeed at them is us setting our own rules, is us setting our own boundaries. And our ARGs don't necessarily mesh with other people's.
Yeah, definitely. And if we kind of can continue that metaphor, further, we're essentially all playing a game designed by, heavily influenced by, institutions and other players, and we're all interacting, we're all negotiating. Dr. Booth, you mentioned this in Playing Fans, where you have institutions that are encouraging a type of play, right? We can even extend that even further and say particular communities are, encouraging. So, for example, militia groups, they're encouraging a particular type of play, and how these fans, if you want to call them fans, right? Whether they're a fan of white supremacy or whatever, right? How these fans are playing out this part in real life spaces. So we can incorporate video game studies as like sort of like the default playing position, and how fans negotiate with that default playing position, and how that kind of manifests in real life spaces like the Capitol building, right? But yeah, excellent. We could talk about this all day, or I could, right?
Yeah, you're basically teaching one of my classes, so I think this is perfect.
I love this stuff. I get really excited about talking about this kind of stuff. But let's go ahead and we'll give Lindsay a chance to talk. Lindsay, what's new? I know we had you on pretty recently. Anything new going on?
Well, I am excited. I just started a new campaign of Star Wars yesterday. Not yesterday, Sunday evening. So every other Sunday, I will be doing that on my Twitch as well. Of a new Edge of the Empire campaign running with some people that have never played the game before. So it's a fun learning experience for them, and introducing my friends who are either not Star Wars fans necessarily, they watch the movies, or those that are fans of the movies and not anything else. And like, I always drop them into like the most remote parts of the Star Wars lore I possibly can find. So that's been really entertaining. And other than that, it's just been trying to catch up on shows that I kind of lost track of through the summer. And keeping up with some new stuff coming out. Like I watched I talked about it very briefly, the American Horror Stories series that has come out, and I finally watched the third episode, which is the second story, because the first two episodes were a 2-hour one story more or less. And it's interesting, and it may just be because I was really into the Goosebump movies that came out, the Fear Street movies that came out on Netflix 3 weeks in a row, which were not bad, all things considered. But I guess because they are shorter, more contained stories, they are coming off as like adult Goosebumps to me, which I find fascinating. And as a horror fan and a horror lover, I adore it. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. I may be going down a rabbit hole of American Horror Stories. I thought I was free of American Horror Stories, but apparently not. Just getting back into that fandom and that bottomless pit of conspiracy theories is what the fandom for that show ends up feeling like quite often.
All right, very good, excellent. Catching up on some horror shows, excellent. Acid, what's new with you?
Oh, well, I mean, it's been a couple of days, so I've still been playing, excuse me, I've still been playing New World, Amazon's new game that is still in beta right now. I've gotten halfway to max level, so I'm starting to see a little bit more of the development happen, a little bit more of the player versus player aspect of the game, a little bit more of what's going on questing. As far as what I've been watching, I've been trying to do, I remember I told you guys that I've been trying to do the MCU in chronological order, and I have just finished, well, a couple of days ago, I finished Ant-Man. That's my latest one that I finished, which I was shockingly surprised how much I enjoyed Ant-Man.
So have you not watched all the MCU movies before? Or?
I have not. Ones that I have watched previously, like years ago, like I've seen Iron Man 1 and 2 before, and I've watched the first Avengers movie. That was all I'd ever seen of the MCU.
How did you
other
manage to
than
miss it all?
yeah, like and then me and my wife watched WandaVision a couple of months ago, just all the way through, and I still don't. I don't know. I don't have a really. I don't know. The beginning of that was weird. It ended okay, but now that I'm starting to watch what's going on and how it progresses, it makes a little more sense, and everything. But and since I am surrounded by academia tonight, and I am just a lowly bus driver, I decided to wear my. I may not have a PhD. But I do have a CDL shirt because I am a city school bus driver. So I decided to wear that tonight just because I probably have the lowest IQ of everyone here tonight. But that is okay because
I would not say that. I have a pretty low IQ. Everyone always asks me, and they always say, I'm in a PhD program. They're like, oh, you must be pretty smart. I'm like, nope. I am not.
It is
anybody who's in academia knows that that's not the way it works.
Yeah, it's not smarts that academia rewards.
I used to work for the Department of Human Development and Family Studies at Auburn University for about 8 years, and it was an interesting journey. The first 7 years were really great. The last year, not so much. So I had to get out of there. But as far as working alongside, PhDs and postdoc students and graduate students and just all the, just to be introduced into that type of world, I met some of the coolest people. that I've ever met, and I still keep in contact with a good amount of them just from streaming on Twitch. They come in and hang out with me in my Twitch channel and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's good to see them. But yeah, so I'm still working through my way through the MCU, and I guess what is it? Ant-Man and the Wasp is next, I think, on my list. So is that not next? Whatever's next.
In order, I don't think that's next.
Is that not next? I can't remember. Oh, I think
order,
was Black Widow next?
It might be like Civil War.
No, I watched Civil War already.
No. So you've seen Civil War.
I've seen Captain America Civil War.
Because Black Widow takes place almost immediately after Civil War.
I skipped that just because I didn't want to pay $30 to watch it.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So I skipped that.
Are you going in release order or in the order that it takes place within the Marvel Universe?
According to Disney Plus, I'm going to in the cinematic. There's a section where you can pick the chronological cinematic order. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I've finished Ant-Man, and then I don't know what's next. Maybe
it might be Ant-Man and the Wasp then, if you're
Maybe.
skipping Black Widow.
I did skip Black Widow. I'm not paying $30 to watch one movie. That's just ridiculous. But I mean, if I would have got invited, to the movies,
we didn't know. So Paul, he's giving me a hard time because me and Jeremy, who's another host on the show, we went to go see Black Widow together, and we did not send an invite.
Apparently, I'm not cool enough to.
After the pandemic, none of us know how to be social anymore. We've completely forgotten social niceties.
Is that what it is?
That's true. And I mean, I feel bad for it, and he reminds me every day.
Well, I'll tell you what. When Ghostbusters hits, I was going to bring this up. When Ghostbusters hits in November, we just all need to go see that, because if you have not seen the trailer that came out today, you're missing out. You need to go watch it as soon as you get done here, because it looks phenomenal.
I'm so excited for that movie. I've not been
so
excited
good.
for a reboot in a long time.
Like, the last movie was terrible. This one will take care of that and much more.
All right, excellent. We're all excited about Ghostbusters. Paul, anything new?
I guess, the thing that I've been rewatching this summer, I started about a month ago, is I'm doing a Doctor Who rewatch. So you may or may not know, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and I both in my private life, but also in my professional life, I write about Doctor Who, and I teach a class on Doctor Who, and I wear a lot of Doctor Who. So I saw on Twitter, and forgive me that I don't remember where I saw it, who the tweet was from, but if you started watching every episode of Doctor Who one a day, you'd end by the 60th anniversary, which is November 23rd, 2023, which is about two years and 4 or 5 months away. So I started at the end of June and have been kind of making my way through, and I've seen them all before, but I haven't seen them in chronological order, and I've definitely not watched them kind of one at a time. And it's fabulous. It is so much fun. You really see them in a new light. You see like the actors coming to terms with their characters and figuring out their relationships. And you certainly, I'm almost done with the first season. And by the time you've gotten to the end of the first season, you've really seen the behind, like they kind of know what Doctor Who is. It's not what Doctor Who becomes, but it's a much clearer vision than it was at the beginning, and seeing that progression in order is fantastic. So I am tweeting about it. So if you follow me, pbooth81 on Twitter, or I'm using the hashtag Doctor Who Rewatch, I'm just posting up a little snippet of it every day of my kind of re-impression of the episode, and it's been a real joy to explore that.
As a fellow Doctor Who fan, I am compelled to ask this then.
I know what
Doctor.
you're gonna ask. My answer is I don't know, but go ahead. Ask it.
Yes, I have to know your favorite Doctor.
Well, I will shoot back. Classic or new Doctor, or do you not differentiate?
I tend not to differentiate, or I just say both, one of each.
You know, I get into this conversation with my students in my Doctor Who class because they're always curious, and I always say, like, I can't tell you till the end of class because then I would spoil it. So I'll tell you at the end of the podcast, Lindsay.
Sounds good. I like it. Keep everybody on the edge of their seat. You
That's
know
right.
the biz.
I know how to keep people entertained.
Hey,
Well, I've only ever seen one Doctor Who episode, and it's the very first one, and it confused the garbage out of me, and I just haven't been able to watch another one since.
It's really, I feel like modern audiences with Doctor Who, it's really what Doctor and what episode you get introduced to will like completely, because I watched Doctor Who for a couple episodes, hated it, and then like I had like the flu in college one day, like undergrad, and just watched BBC all day and happened to come across the Weeping Angels episode, which as a horror fan, that's like one of the most horror Doctor Who episodes, and also one of the least Doctor Who episodes, and it got me into it. And then I just rapidly started watching Doctor Who. So it's really kind of the art of finding the episode that gets your feet wet, and then it's really easy after that.
Yeah, because my nieces and nephews were like, "Oh, Doctor Who is the best. You got to watch it." And so me and my wife were like, "Okay, well, we'll give this a shot." So of course we go season 1, episode 1. Let's see what this is all about. And we watched it. We went, "What the flip was that?" And like we just, it's like, no, we can't do this. So we stopped. So
my thing with Doctor Who is I'm actively pushing against starting watching it because my nerd heart doesn't have room for another show. Like I just can't. I can't do it. I'm such a huge Star Trek fan. There's so many people are telling me that I need to check out Doctor Who and how great it is, but like I resist it because I'm like I can't get hooked on another show. Like I can't, not on another fandom. I can't.
And that's not an easy show.
I'm
like, it's
also
long.
a huge Star Trek fan. You got my Captain Kirk right there.
There you go.
There's room in your heart for both.
Do you see? So there's a picture of me and William Shatner. I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to brag here.
I've got a Shatner.
What about?
Oh, it's a competition now.
Do you have a Patrick Stewart? I have one with Patrick Stewart.
No, I'm so jealous of you.
All right. Okay. That's a good segue. So Patrick Stewart. So Captain Jean-Luc Picard is my favorite fictional character of all time. Like I grew up wanting to be him as a kid, right? Anyways, all right. So good. So let's go ahead and get to our actual topic for today, and that is our favorite board games. We'll talk about our 4 favorite board games. We'll kind of each share one. We'll discuss. And we picked 3. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to share what I liked about the game, but then I'm going to share a flaw. Because every one of these board games has a flaw with them, or maybe it doesn't work in certain situations. So my very first one, and I have props. So my very first one is if you're not familiar with this game.
Hey, that one's in the thumbnail. Go for it.
So 7 Wonders. If you're not familiar with 7 Wonders, it's you're basically building a civilization, and in order to win, you need to accumulate points, and you accumulate points by focusing on different areas. So if you want to be pure military, you can do that. If you want to do pure science, or if you want to do pure like economics, or some sort of like combination of all 3, you can do that. Now the best strategy is to sort of pick one. Now, obviously, it depends on the cards that you're dealt, but sort of like the strategy is you start seeing what's being dealt with you, and you kind of go with what you're being given and try to build off of that. So you stack things on. So if you have multiple, like if you're starting to get a lot of army, like you just start building for military, and then you're interacting with other people's civilizations. So it's actually a whole lot of fun. It's one of the quickest games you'll play. It's actually a super quick game. It's only about 3 rounds. So there's 3 developing points where you're just passing cards to each other, and you're all building your civilization. You pick your cards, you put it down, you stack them together, and you do that 3 times, and then you just count points, and whoever has the highest score wins the game. So it's incredibly quick. It's a whole lot of fun. Yes, there's an element of luck involved, and you can quickly have a terrible strategy from the very beginning. You're like, oh, this was horrible. I should not have done this. But that's the fun about the game. I will say this. The main drawback to this game is the learning curve when you first play it is so high. I mean, it takes you almost the entire night to figure out how to play it. So especially if you don't have anyone who's never played before. So one night we bought the game and we had a big group of people playing board games, and it felt like the whole night we were just figuring out how to play the game. But once you know how to play it, and if you play with people who know how to play, it's one of the quickest games you'll ever play. So you could play multiple games in a night. So that's definitely one of the benefits is it's a pretty quick game. When most board games take a while, like an hour or so. But definitely, so Seven Wonders is my first board game.
You seem to be familiar with it, Dr. Booth.
Yeah, I love Seven Wonders. I'll probably mention him again, but my best friend has an enormous board game collection, and I have a large board game collection, and we try not to double each other's games so we can share them. And he has Seven Wonders, so I've only played it a couple times when I've been over at his place, but I feel like if I had it, I would play it all the time because it is so fast. It's always different. There's so many different strategies to win, and I really like the way you like borrow from other people and kind of pay them money to use their resources without them even knowing. You just like throw money their way and you're like, I'm taking your bricks, and like I enjoy that kind of it's not cooperation, but it's not competition. It's this in between.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. All right, there you go. There's my first one. Lindsay, what's your number one? What's your first example or board game, whatever?
So my issue coming into this is that I have not historically been a board game player. My family has not historically been a board game. At best, we were card game people. We'd play like Uno and Crazy Eights and stuff like that. So I have very limited and very specific things with board games, and a lot of what I consider board games may not necessarily be board games. So I'm just going to go with start with what I know is a board game, and each one of my things is going to get increasingly less like a board game. So I think my current favorite board game that is actually a board game that I got introduced to by a friend is called Nyctophobia. And it is, again, as the horror junkie that I am, it is a, quote, horror board game where you have one player who can see the board and everybody else is blindfolded, and it becomes a 3D board that's being built. And the player that can see the board is a killer who is trying to kill your characters, and you are reliant on your sense of touch and communication with the other blindfolded players to try and get your character to escape. And it is, I think, it's one of those things of like, it depends on who you're playing with and maybe how drunk you are when you are playing it, as to the experience. But because it is so different than anything you'd expect when you're like, okay, we're going to go and play a board game, it is just fascinating to me. And then, of course, it also depends on who's playing the killer and how much they want to like ham up that position. So like, they want to say they're a vampire and start doing like weird vampire crap, and you're blindfolded and like you're just having to deal with it. It actually gets really entertaining and really fun really fast. So I personally love Nyctophobia. I don't own it, but I do plan on owning it very soon.
Fun fact about Nyctophobia: the woman who designed it because her uncle is blind, and she wanted to find a game a board game that she could play with her uncle where he wasn't disadvantaged.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
This is why we have you as a guest. You bring in the expert information that we
Honestly, there are so few places this sort of information is rewarded or even desired. It's a pleasure.
All right, excellent. All right, two great games already been mentioned. Acid, what's yours?
When I was going through my list, I was like, you know what, I'm going to pick a couple for myself, but I asked my wife and my children, what their favorite board game was. And we have been playing something recently that we have really enjoyed. And I noticed, Paul, that you have a lot of Funko stuff behind you. Funkoverse board games we have extremely enjoyed, especially the DC and the Marvel and the Harry Potter, and I think they make like Golden Girls, and I mean it just the stuff
Jurassic
is
Park
just,
one.
yeah, there's a Jurassic Park one, but we have the DC and the Harry Potter, all the boards and that kind of stuff, and we just love sitting down for family night, and we'll play some Funkoverse, Capture the Flag, or Territories, and stuff like that. And it's the little Funko Pop people, and they, one of them gets a little weapon, and you have little special cards that they have different powers and little spell cards and that kind of stuff, and you have little strategies that you use for the whole game, and each game takes about an hour, and it's a 3v3 kind of thing, but we just really, really love it as a family. Well, me and one of my daughters will sit on one side of the table, and my wife and my other daughter will sit on the other side, and we'll go on and we'll see who can win, and it's a lot of fun. So that was definitely my family's pick for number 3.
All right, excellent. I was a little concerned that we were all going to mention the same games. This is not going to happen.
This is not going to happen.
Which is good. Paul, what's your example here?
Well, I'm going to go with a game that I helped kickstart when it was first coming out, and I loved it on Kickstarter because the theme was so appealing to me. It could be hit or miss with a Kickstarter game because you don't actually get it. But then when I received it and I played it, it rapidly rose to the top of my list of favorite games. It's a game called Anachrony by Mind Clash Games, which is a time travel themed game where there has been a cataclysm in Earth's history, and a massive comet hit the Earth and split humanity into 4 tribes, four groups of people, and they're each in different kind of locations. And the Earth is a wasteland, so they have to go out onto the planet to get supplies in giant mech suits. And so part of your job is to decide how many mech suits to put out there, because that's how many actions you get, but they cost energy, and you have to use other things to get energy, so it's kind of a resource management game. But the time travel is what really makes it so fascinating, because when the comet hit, it brought a new element called neutronium, I think. Unobtainium, whatever. And if you use this element and you have a time travel machine, you can you can go back to previous rounds, and you can fulfill tasks in those rounds, and you can get supplies from your future self. So let's say you really need to have gold in this round. You take a gold, but in a later round, you have to go back in time and pay back that gold. Or there's like an anachronism, and you lose massive points at the end of the game. So it's balancing resources, but it's also balancing time. And it's a big game. It's a heavy game. It's not a game that you can just like say, hey, let's play Anachrony, and you're done in half an hour. But it is well worth the setup and the depth of the game.
That sounds awesome. Is this a game that you can just buy at the like a board game store? Or is this kind of like a special order kind of thing?
At this point, you could probably get it at a board game store. It's been out for a couple of years. You wouldn't find it at Target, but your friendly local board game store will have a copy or be able to order a copy. It's not cheap. It's probably $100. It comes with like a ton of little minis, and it comes with just hundreds of cubes and things that make it. And there's new expansions and stuff. But so it is a bit of an investment. But I've probably played it. I've played it more than 10 times, and each game is a couple of hours. And if you just say it was $100 and I played it for 30 hours, that's a pretty good return on investment.
I agree. Excellent. All right, so 4 drastically different games. I'll go ahead and get to my next. And once again, I have a prop. All right, so my next board game is Splendor. So Splendor, if you never played Splendor, it's how to describe it? It's kind of like a deck building game, but it's more of a currency building game. In other words, so you have like rows of cards that anybody can pick up if you have the right currency for it, right? But the only way to pick up the very high score cards is by building up your currency, right? So you have to be able to, if I buy a card, now I have this particular currency, and I can add that to the already currency that I'm getting in the individual rounds. So the whole point is you're building up your deck, right? It's one of those games where it's almost like chess. Like you're constantly thinking of multiple rounds. Like, okay, so if I get these 3 coins, and then I can pick this card, but if someone else picks that card, then I need to be able to get this. Like you're constantly doing that throughout the game. So it's a heady game, right? So it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of interacting with the other players. You're constantly having to adjust your strategy based on what everybody else is doing. So if you like pure strategy games, Splendor is a game for you. It's also relatively quick as well. It's a pretty quick game, and once it's pretty quick to learn too. Like you need to play it a couple times, but once you get it, you get it, and it's a whole lot of fun. So the only drawback, I guess you could say, is that if you are not into like those kinds of games, like you're not into like really heady, like I need to think multiple turns in advance, then this might be not the game for you. But it's also a great 2-player game. There is not a lot of 2-player board games out there. So, I mean, you could play just you and somebody else. So definitely a game for you. Are you familiar with this game, Paul?
I'm familiar with it. I've never played Splendor, which to a board gamer is kind of like saying I've never seen all the MCU movies. Call back to earlier. It's never popped up in my gameplay, but I hear great things about it. So
yeah, it's definitely a whole lot of fun. All right, excellent. All right, Lindsay, what's your next one?
So continuing to move further and further away from board games, my second is essentially the game that I played probably the most when I was a kid, and it's Boggle. So Boggle's just, you have a whole bunch of letter cubes, you shake it up, and it comes into this grid, and then you're competing on a time limit on how many words you can find in this grid. And I played it so much because growing up, I was traveling a lot for family, and so we had a actual travel edition of Boggle that was in this nice little tiny case, and we could play it in hotel rooms or in the back of the car or whatever. And I also fully admit that I ended up enjoying playing it because I was a language and English kid in school, and I am the sole reason that Boggle was banned from my class. And when we hit high school, because I kept winning, and people didn't like that. And it's the only, I say that I'm a language person, but it's also the only language game that I could play because I can't spell to save my life. So anything that requires me to actually spell, I couldn't do. So I have really fond memories of Boggle. But I do know there is some debate over whether or not we should consider that to be a board game. But I mean, sure. You played in the same setting more or less, so there we go.
I'll allow it. I'll say that's a board game.
Yeah,
and then there's kind of a board involved. That's totally fine. There you go, Boggle. All right, excellent. Asa, what's your next one?
All right, so my next one, actually, you introduced me to.
Are you going to take one of mine? Are you taking one of mine?
I hope not. So you introduced me to now what is one of my favorite board games of all time. Not my favorite board game, but one of my favorites, Sheriff of Nottingham.
Oh, okay. This is not part of my game. Go ahead.
I loved that game. When we had that game night back when we went over to your house when you were still in Opelika. And we just kind of all gathered around the table, and we all had our little satchels, and we all had our little coins, and we had our bread and our chickens, and just trying to get things past the sheriff. And oh man, that was just so much fun. I cannot remember a time where I had gathered around with folks and friends just at a board game and had so much fun just kind of manipulating everyone. That was just amazing to me. And I've been meaning to just buy a copy of it, just because I think my family would really enjoy it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But yeah, that was definitely something that I really enjoyed when we were together, and that's why it's my number 2, and proud to be my number 2. So kudos to you, Anthony.
Yeah, definitely that's definitely a great game to play with. Like, for example, if you have family over who are not really big into board games, and you just need to like, hey, this is kind of like a good like introducing game to board games, like, because it's the rules aren't very complicated, and then lying to your family is so much fun.
Well, it's just the fun part is like trying to sneak past, getting like, oh, I've got 3 chickens, and you give it past the sheriff and like, oh, well, let me check your bag. Oh, how about you not check my bag, and I'll give you this nice silver coin here, So there's the bribery, and then it's just, I don't know, there's a lot wrapped up into it that's just so much fun.
All right, excellent, very good, Sheriff of Nottingham, where you're lying to your friends,
lying to your friends,
sneak in contraband. All right, Paul, what's your next one?
I thought long and hard about this one, and it was a toss up between my second favorite and my favorite board game. But my second favorite board game I've decided is Time Stories, which is another time travel themed board game. I have a brand.
So it seems to be a theme there, Paul.
I know. My first is not a time travel game, I promise. But this one is a fabulous puzzle type game. It's a cooperative game, which sees all the characters or all the players kind of inhabit the minds, Quantum Leap style, of people in a different time period, and then they have to work together to solve puzzles. So you've got a deck, and you've got a map, and you go to different locations, and you have to like figure out what you need in this location in order to unlock the door in this location, and then you get this card. And so there's a lot of communication. It also comes like there's only one game in a pack, because once you've solved the puzzles, you've solved it. But then new packs come out, and so you kind of can build up this whole world of your time travelers. It's fabulous. Every game night that I had with my friend and his family, and where we were playing Time Stories, was just we would play for hours and hours and never get tired. So definitely recommend Time Stories.
Excellent. Why am I not surprised at the 2 games that you have mentioned I've never heard of before? Why am I not surprised by that?
I'm not trying to deep dive, but I did want to pick ones that were unique to me.
Hey, great. Deep dives are even better. I enjoy it. Excellent. Very good. All right, so we'll get to my final example. And once again, prop.
He's got a prop.
So this one is, I have mixed feelings about this game, actually. This can be one of the funnest games you can play, but it can also be one of the most frustrating games that you can play. All right, so Betrayal in the House of Haunted Hill. It's a horror game, Lindsay. There you go. And
is that one of the ones we played on?
Me and you played this.
Yeah. Okay.
Me and you played this.
Yeah.
So Lindsay, if this might be a game that you might be into, because actually,
sell it to me.
This one's
it's
fun.
very close to D&D too, right? So
is.
the way you
I
play
like
the
this
game
one.
is you pick a character, and the character you have certain abilities based on the character that you choose, and then the game builds as you play. So you have a tile, you put a tile down, and then the next person puts another tile down, and then the third person. You're building the mansion as the game goes. So the first part of the game is you're simply trying to explore the mansion, and you're trying to build up your character. You're trying to find weapons and stuff, right? So you're all kind of working together, the first part. But throughout the game, as the game progresses, you get closer and closer and closer to, I can't remember what they call it. Is it the event?
The haunt.
The haunt. Yeah, it's the haunt.
You get closer to the haunt, and when the haunt happens, one of the person becomes the betrayer. But each game, depending on when the haunt happens, each game can be drastically different. So you have a whole list of potential ways that the game can go. So for example, you could play the game and then the haunt happens and then one person's the betrayer and they become a werewolf, for example, is one of the games we played. And you're all trying to kill the werewolf. Or the betrayer becomes a ghost and you're trying to get outside the house. Like, so it's a completely different game every time. I'm assuming, Paul, from your reaction, you've played this game.
I played this a lot. I have a poster of it because I really like it.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to look into it then, because that sounds like one of the board games I will actually pay attention to.
Lindsay, I think you would really, because like I said before, it's the closest to D&D you can really get. And the great thing about it is, if you have a group of people who are are into it, then it could be a whole lot of fun. But this is not the game that you play when your family who's over for Christmas. This is not that game, because everyone has to be kind of into it to play. I have found. I will say one of the main drawbacks to this game and why it can be so frustrating is because the rules are incredibly arbitrary. Like they get a lot. There are many times where you can't tell what you can do as the werewolf. So it's like, okay, can I do this? The rules don't say I can't do that. And then obviously the rules in the game are, well, everybody votes. Well, of course, everyone's going to vote against you as the werewolf, saying you can't do that. So there are times where it can be frustrating that the instructions are not as clear. You almost wish. This is almost an example where you would need a dungeon master to say, hey, look, this is what you can and can't do. But since you don't have a dungeon master, you kind of go by the rules. It almost feels like they need to kind of streamline the rules a little more and be a little more clear. But I would say that was the most frustrating element of it. Okay. All right, well, very good. All right, so Lindsay,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed when I played. So yeah.
This is where I very much cheat and kind of cop out, because I have to go into the tabletop role-playing games, because that's where my bread and butter is. That's what I spend most of my time on. And at least when you can play in person, they can be very board game-esque with all your miniatures and your maps and everything like that. And I've spent a lot of time playing Dungeons and Dragons and all of the Star Wars ones. But I think just as an excuse to hype up a game that not a lot of people pay attention to, it's because it's new and it's, a kickstarted game. And this is very much a weird thing for me to suggest in a podcast full of men, and I apologize, but it's a tabletop role-playing game called Thirsty Sword Lesbians. And so it is specifically it is a tabletop role-playing game that is created for the LGBTQ plus community. So all of the characters and all of that you have options for, all of the kind of storylines and everything that you have options for are queer characters in one form or fashion. And it is more of a role-playing game than it is like a combat game. It was kickstarted like 2 years ago. They've just started getting all the they send out all the PDFs last year, and they're starting to get it printed this year, if I'm not mistaken, and sent out to game shops and such. And there's even Roll20 extensions and rule books and stuff, so it's really easy to plug into how people play TTRPGs right now in pandemic times. But I really enjoy it. It's really kind of a cute, fun game. It's not necessarily designed to be the giant campaigns that last for years and years and years like Dungeons and Dragons can be. It's designed to be a lot shorter, a lot, 2 or 3 sessions with a couple of friends and that type of stuff. But I do have to kind of pimp that out because I was a backer for that. I was really excited for it. I got to mess around with some of the pre-release stuff on it and test it out a little bit, and I have enjoyed it ever since. So, I mean, I play a lot more of the Star Wars ones, but Thirsty Sword Lesbian is one I have to put out there as Z approved, more or less.
All right, excellent. How did I become the mainstream dude? How did that happen? I'm doing all the mainstream games. That's great. I like it. All right, Aston, what's your next one? Your final one?
Okay, my final one is my all-time favorite, and it's been a favorite of mine ever since I started PC gaming. It is a board game, but they have brought it over to PC as well, and that is Sid Meier's Civilization. Civilization is it's so great. Like again, when you were talking about was the Seven Wonders, the learning curve on it is so vast. But once you get the learning curve and you know what's going on, that game is it's the most fun game that I've ever played, as far as board game type or board game style. So it's a turn-based game where the goal is you start as a nation, and you can pick a nation or you can do a random nation, however you want to do it, and it's very interactive, and you can play multiplayer or you can play against the computer or what have you. And your goals are not the same. You can win in different variations. You can have the most wonders of the world. You can to win the game. You can go to space to win the game. You can conquer everybody to win the game. You can have the most art to win the game. I mean, it's just, there's so many different things that you can do to win the game. And that is what is the draw. And I'm still trying to win the space race, and I can't do it just yet. Like, it's so difficult because that takes so long, because you have to advance your civilization so far to actually leave orbit and travel the stars. And usually before that happens, someone's already conquered everybody, or somebody's already built all the wonders of the world, or somebody's already done all this other stuff. And so for me, it's trying to, and I try this at least once a week, because the games can last for several hours depending on, how you're playing. But so I've been trying to okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to win the space race? And so I haven't done it yet, but I'm working on it. But it's very fun. It's a beautiful game too. It's a beautiful game, and you can look at it because I believe it's Civilization 6 is the latest edition of the game on PC right now. And you can look at it as it's as it intended to be, with all the beautiful graphics and everything, or there's a mode where you can actually turn it into just a tile-based game where you can just basically do strategies and not even worry about the aesthetics of the game and just kind of go for it. And I've done both ways, and both ways are so great. I don't have a favorite of how to play it that way aesthetically, but it's just such a great game, and something that if you haven't checked it out before, you should.
All right, excellent. Once again, drastically different games. I feel like it's very important for me. I purposely left Settlers of Catan out. But
I thought you were gonna. Yeah, I figured you would.
That is actually my favorite game of all time.
Yeah, I figured you'd mention that. That's a good game
I thought
too.
Someone was going to mention it, but I guess that's just it's almost like saying Monopoly. But actually, Settlers of Catan is my favorite game of all time. But anyways, so Paul, what's your final?
All right, my number one game. It's a game that I love so much. I have played it more than any other game. I've mainly played it solo, which is one of the things I really like about it. It plays really well solo. And I ended up writing a whole chapter about it in my book, the new book, The Board Games as Media book. It's called Gloomhaven. It's the number one board game on Board Game Geek. So it is kind of like, a lot of people's favorite games. So, but it's, it's just so perfect. Everything fits so well together. You've got character building, you've got campaigns, you've got gigantic maps that you build, you've got hundreds of different monsters that you can fight. There's 20 different or 18 different main characters you can play as. There's a whole story of this world that is deep. And then there's a sequel game coming out called Frosthaven, which is gonna be bigger. The Gloomhaven, I started playing Gloomhaven when I kickstarted it again, and it came almost 3 years ago, I think. And I just had it set up on a table in my basement, and I just every night would go down there and play for an hour, just playing solo, just playing the game on my own for over a year. And it was just like it became part of my life. And I just have so many good memories of amazing things that have happened. And I've actually gone back and I'm now playing it with my girlfriend, so that we are kind of going back through the campaigns. And it's been so long, I've kind of forgotten them. And she's enjoying it. And it's just, it's a magical experience.
Sounds fantastic. I like it. Excellent. All right. So plenty of great games. Once again, I was afraid we were going to all mention the same game, but why am I not surprised? No, fantastic. Definitely need to check all these games out. Definitely a lot of games. Before we continue, Paul, how are we on time? I know you've been very generous with your time so far.
We're all right.
All right, excellent. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on to trivia real quick. We have a couple of trivia questions. Acid, you got that ready for us?
I've got it ready. We got 3 trivia questions. How this is going to work is I'm going to say, how many of blank can you name? We'll give you a minute or so to think about it. You can write them down. You can think of them, however you want to do that. I'll go through and be like, all right, well, who can name 2? Who can name 3? Just throw up a hand. Whoever can name the most, prove it, and you win the round.
So we're technically playing a board game, right? We're playing Geek Out.
Pretty much, yeah. We're playing, it's a game called, if you can see it, Geek Out. There we go. So we got some cards here. All right, so our first question, let's go to video games for this.
Okay, here we go.
How many characters can you name from the Mario Brothers franchise?
Oh my goodness.
Characters from the Mario Brothers franchise. Name as many as you can.
Are we talking about, because there's a lot of crossovers, are we talking pure Mario?
What do you mean
You know, 'cause
pure?
there's a lot-
Yeah, pure Mario. Yeah.
You know how, because Mario crosses over with other things, so technically like a Mario game will be
No
like,
Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
okay?
Smash Brothers
Okay,
does not count.
Then we're getting all
No.
kinds of...
Your iconic Mario Bros. Characters. Name them all. I think Anthony can name all of them. Let's see.
I think you guys are going to be able to do way more than I can on this one.
I'm trying to think of other characters.
See, some of them, like, I don't know if it's technically a character or if
Yeah.
it's
Like,
something
you've got your
else.
characters, you've got your little villains, you've got, your helpers.
I've got
there's-
seven definites, and
Okay.
then 2 maybes, and then there's a bunch that I know have names, but I don't know their names.
Okay. All right, so we'll start at 7. So Paul has 7. So who has 8?
I literally have 7.
Okay.
Probably the same 7.
All right, Lindsay, you said you have 8?
I possibly have 10.
Oh,
don't know.
okay. And Paul possibly has 10 as well.
No, I possibly have 9.
You possibly have 9.
Yes.
Okay.
But some
Okay.
of them, like I said, I don't know if it's technically a character or.
All right. Well, Lindsay is possible 10. Anthony, unless you can do 11.
Look, if you guys are going to start naming like random enemies in Mario, you need to know their name. Because they have
we gotta
to
have
names.
names. They all have names. They all have names.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, Lindsay, let's hear the 10.
So you have Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy,
Okay.
Bowser,
Okay.
Wario and Waluigi,
Correct.
King Boo,
Correct.
and then the ones I don't know for certain is Goomba. Well, Toad is one. I know
Correct.
that's actual name in Goomba.
Yes. And Goomba is one. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Those are all correct.
I would.
All right, Paul, what you got?
I had all of those. I didn't have some of them. I also had a question about Wario and Waluigi. So
Yes, Wario and Waluigi are part of the
They count.
Mario franchise. Yep.
I'd also say Yoshi.
Yoshi is also part of the Mario franchise. Yep.
Oh, I pictured him in my head, but I could not remember the name
Yep.
to save my life.
Well, I forgot Daisy.
Yep.
I
Did you have any
I was
that-
struggling with Toad at the very end. Was what I
Yeah.
was. got
Toad's
stuck
one of the
on.
iconic ones. What do you got, Anthony? Any of those that were not mentioned?
I had Toad and Yoshi, but I put isn't Browser one?
It's
Bowser.
Bowser. It's Bowser. Yeah, Lindsay had that one. Yeah.
And then what's Bowser's? Bowser has a kid, doesn't he?
Bowser has a ton of kids.
Yeah, there's a little Bowser. I think I can't remember his name, but I know if you
There's
say it, I
Lenny.
know it.
Lenny, one of them.
Maybe. I
Maybe.
just wanted to say Bowser Jr. and I'm like, that's not right.
It might actually be Bowser Jr. because
It-
we've got
it-
Mario Party that we play a good bit, and it might be Bowser Jr. So
There's a Mario. One of
'Cause
the
they're-
Mario 64,
mhm.
where you fight all of his little Bowser children.
yeah,
Mhm.
they might be Bowser
They
Jr.
all have names, but I can't remember any of them because it was too long ago.
Because there's like the Hammer Bros.
Yeah.
and-
Oh, Hammer Brothers.
yeah, the Hammer Bros.
And I
are
don't
in
know
there.
if this is necessarily something I should brag about. I only know all of those names through like osmosis in nerd communities because I have not played a Mario game since like the original Mario when I was a child.
There you go.
So that's just osmosis.
And I'm disappointed no one mentioned Shy Guy. So
Oh, of course.
Shy Guy is one of my favorites.
I
All
love
right,
Shy
well, Lindsay
Guy.
takes the round. Congratulations.
Well done.
Well done. All right.
Video games the one thing that I can sometimes lay claim to. That's
All
it.
right. Question 2. We're going to Dr. Seuss, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
I
no.
was so close to hoping you were going to say Doctor Who. And I'm going to school you
With all the academia, we got to go to a doctor, and one of the cards I pulled was Dr. Seuss.
If we were
So-
going to Doctor Who, I would jump out my window.
So, how many Dr. Seuss book titles can you name? Dr. Seuss book titles. I'm pretty sure I own all of them, just because of all my kids. And we just went to Dr. Seuss Land at Universal.
I would have asked me this
So-
2 years ago. I'd probably be able to list all these.
And this is funny because like I remember reading Dr. Seuss. And I was one of those weird people that was obsessed with Seussical the musical when it was out.
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember anything.
Like the kids, like during the school year, they have Dr. Seuss Day. Like they do a whole Dr. Seuss themed. It might be his birthday actually when they celebrate it, and they read Dr. Seuss and they dress up as their favorite Dr. Seuss character.
Yeah, it's usually around the birthday if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Man,
Oh,
like
my-
2 years ago, I used to read Dr. Seuss books to my son all the time, but I totally forgot all these books' names.
And my mom used to be a pre-K teacher. She would kill me
Yep.
because I helped with the Dr. Seuss stuff all the time.
I
Well,
bought
all right.
for my nephew. I got 6, and it's embarrassing
Okay.
because there's like 50 of them.
Oh wow!
That's
Does
you.
anybody have 7?
No.
No. Okay. Well, Paul, let's hear your 6.
All right. Well, there's the obvious Cat in the Hat,
Yeah. All right.
and then the less obvious Cat in the Hat comes back.
That's true. Yeah.
One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish.
Yep. Gotcha.
Eggs and ham.
Yep.
Horton Hears a Who,
Yep.
and I believe Yertle the Turtle.
Yertle the Turtle is
Yep.
one.
Those are the 6 I got, but I know there's like a million more.
Oh, there's a million. Like there's
The
Mr.
Lorax is one.
The
that I-
Lorax.
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 Mr. Brown.
I got one. Hop on Pop.
Hop on Pop was one. Yep. What's the one with the hat? The Go Dog Go. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
Dog Go was one. Yeah, that was one of my favorites as a kid. Well, all right. Paul takes the round.
All right.
All right,
There we
Anthony.
go.
In order for
This
us to
is
do a
nothing new.
tiebreaker, you're gonna have to get
is
this
nothing
one.
new. Me losing in trivia is nothing new. All right.
Okay.
For the host of a nerd show, you
should be
don't
winning
impress
all
with
of
this
these.
very often.
I am
And Jeremy's
terrible at
not
trivia.
here. So okay, I'm getting again with the academia theme.
Oh.
We're going to the Big Bang Theory, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, you gotta be kidding! I don't even watch the show.
I don't
Watch all the academics just like, no.
All right, so 2 people have
Ju-
vetoed this.
you at
question.
least have a chance because
Okay,
you haven't listened to
okay.
the question yet. How many celebrities have made a cameo appearance on the Big Bang Theory? I can answer these. We watched this just about 3 times a week. So
My dad loves this show.
it's a great show. Young Sheldon's a really good show too.
I honestly hate Big Bang Theory, so
Yeah, I've never watched a whole episode, I don't think.
It has its place in the world.
Do you have a document open with a list of celebrities on Big Bang Theory so you can double check what I'm
I
writing
can.
down?
Sure, I can. Yeah. Hang on.
Well, I think this is all you, Anthony, because I came up with 2.
Well, I can do 3. I don't know if I can do 3.
All right, Big Bang Theory celebrity guests. All right, hang on. Let me get my list. Hang on.
So I got 3 for sure's.
Okay. All right. So 3. Anybody have 4?
So
No?
it should be noted.
Okay.
It should be noted. It should be noted that I have not seen a single
That's
episode
fine.
of Big Bang Theory.
All right. Let's hear it.
I know for a fact that Will Whedon's on it.
He is on it. Yes, correct.
Brent Spiner
Yes.
has been a guest. These are my guesses.
Okay.
Is it Mark Hamill has got to be a guest?
Mark Hamill has been on the show.
There you go. That's my 3.
I thought Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy. Actually, Leonard Nimoy was not on the show. His son was on the show.
and I know Stephen Hawkins was on.
Stephen
one
Hawkins was on the
episode.
show. Stan Lee was on the show. George Takei was on the show. Carrie Fisher made an appearance.
Carrie Fisher was on.
Carrie Fisher made an appearance. Yep.
We just should have, like, Paul, we should have just started writing down every nerd
Yeah,
that we could
you
think
could
of.
have.
Nerd
LeVar
actors, yeah.
LeVar Burton, Adam West, Stan Lee. I mean, yeah. Katie Sackhoff. Yeah. I mean, it's,
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Adam West autograph right here. Carrie
Yeah.
Fisher autograph right there.
Okay. Well, Anthony has taken the round. What do we do? What do we do for a tiebreaker?
We
I
all.
guess
We could all win. We could do one more.
you could
I
all
really
win.
don't want Anthony to win because we want to keep that streak of Anthony not winning.
What is going on here?
We could go a tabletop question.
Was that
You want to do a tabletop question?
okay?
Okay.
Inspired by Paul being here.
Might as well. How many board games can you name? No, let's not do that. That would
God.
take forever.
Let me just go in the other room for a second.
Yeah. Give me an hour and a half. I'll come back to you.
I got Splendor and
right.
Seven Wonders.
How many tabletop RPGs can you name?
Oh, actually.
Hey,
I won't
hey.
be good at this. This
Tabletop
is all you.
RPGs.
Okay, give me a minute.
It's only because it's on this card right here. I don't want to shuffle through all the rest of them. Because I want to save them for future episodes too. Tabletop RPGs.
So we're just saying any game where you're playing a role of a character. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Correct. Yes. This is our tiebreaker, ladies and gentlemen. 3-way tie. This has not happened in a while.
I'm assuming that the person who just listed 3 games that I've never heard of is going to know.
I am not a tabletop role playing person. I love them, but I don't know them.
Give me a few more seconds.
You want me to cap myself?
Yeah, I think.
Uh-oh. Lindsay might win this one. Uh-oh, we lost Lindsay's feed.
See, you've given me my question. I'm gonna like never get another trivia right because I was on the show like Saturday, and you gave me a Star Wars question, and now
That's right, I did. didn't
I'm
I?
here Tuesday, and you're giving
Sorry,
me a
this
tabletop.
was my fault. All right, so who can name 27? Anybody? Can anybody name? All right, Lindsay, how many do you have right now?
I have 9 currently, but I could probably name 15 off the top of my head.
Anybody else got 10? No? All right, Lindsay, let's hear it.
So, of course, there's the Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you want, there's been 6 iterations of it, if I'm not mistaken. There's Thirsty Sword Lesbians that I mentioned earlier. There's a game called GURPS. There is Core. There is these 2 technically separate, but also the same, Edge of the Empire and Age of Rebellion Star Wars games. There's the Star Wars Saga game. There is a indigenous tabletop role-playing game coming out. It's called Coyote and Crow. And there's Call of Cthulhu. And then, of
Holy
course, there's all of the World of Darkness games. So,
goodness.
Werewolf the Apocalypse and Vampire Masquerade and everything like that.
Well, my goodness. Lindsay takes the round and wins a lifetime supply of Twizzlers. Congratulations.
I'll go ahead and add a couple here. So,
Win.
Betrayal of the House on Haunted Hill. Which I
Okay.
just,
Okay.
Munchkin,
Oh, Munchkin. Oh, Munchkin's great.
Dead of Winter. If you've never played Dead of Winter, that's actually a really fun game. And then Resistance. If you've never played Resistance, it's basically werewolf, but
No, but now that you said Munchkin, I want to play Munchkin all of a sudden. I love that game.
well,
all right.
that concludes our show. Thank you so much, Paul, for being on here. You're generous with your time. Thank you so much for being
Oh,
here.
it was my pleasure. This was so much fun, and it was wonderful getting to meet all of you.
You too.
That's so great. Excellent. Of course, Dr. Paul Booth has a brand new book, Board Games as Media. I have actually not read it yet, but I'm definitely going to read it. Definitely check that out. Thank you, Paul, for being here. Thank you, Acid. Thank you, Lindsay, for being here as well. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can check us out on YouTube. That's the show for today. Have a good one, everybody.